There's a moment that's going to happen at some point this school year. You're going to be tired and stretched thin, and something is going to come at you, whether that's a parent email, a behavior issue, a last-minute request from your admin. And in that moment, you're going to react immediately and potentially with patterns that your brain has already created. And from my experience coaching teachers, a lot of that is just continuing to put everything on your plate, continuing to do everything. And because we didn't decide ahead of time what we are able to do, what we are not. And here's the thing we're going to talk about today. You can decide how you're going to handle a lot of these moments right now before they actually happen, while you actually have the capacity to think clearly. And there's one specific type of decision, one most teachers never think of ahead of time, that ends up mattering so much more than the rest. That's what we're talking about today. Welcome to Educate and Rejuvenate, the podcast to help you revitalize your teaching, renew your spirit, and reignite your passion for life. I'm your host, Kelsey Sorensen, a former teacher, current homeschool mom, published author, and certified life coach. Whether you are a teacher in a traditional classroom, homeschool from your kitchen table, or anywhere in between, I am on a mission to help you not only survive as an educator, but thrive. Get ready to uplevel your skills with incredible insights from guest experts and discover the missing piece, rejuvenating yourself. Are you ready to both educate and rejuvenate? Let's go. I'm so excited to be back here on the podcast, let me tell you. So last week, if you missed last week's episode, we talked about how many of us feel when we're at the very end of our summer. I shared a coaching clip of a teacher, Tori, who was sharing her experience with her last 2 weeks of summer, and how so often our teacher brain, which is what I like to call our default patterns that I've noticed in teachers I've been coaching over the last 3 to 4 years, that so many of us do this same thing. And what happens when we finally create the space between stimulus and response instead of just reacting? So today we're going to build on that. We're talking about how to make some decisions now ahead of time. If you're listening to this before the school even starts, great, even better, but it can also be anytime. Because here's the thing, if we let everything outside of us, our circumstances, decide what we do, we end up spending most of our mental energy on things we didn't even realize we were deciding, or we were just letting our admin or the teacher next door decide what we're doing next. If we let everything outside of us decide what to do, then it doesn't leave any space for what we want to do, right? So this is actually a session that I taught live at our summer refresh event this year, right after that coaching clip in front of 1,000 teachers. And in it, there's one type of decision that I think is the most important, and it might surprise you how it's going to make such a difference. So once you hear it, I hope that you take it and apply it to your own classroom. So let's get into it. So right now we're going to look at how to decide before circumstances, those things outside of you, decide for you, and how to choose when everything feels important. Do any of you feel like this cute little brain here? Like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. I feel stuck. Anybody? So let's start with something super practical. The decisions you're already making every single day without even realizing it. How many decisions do you think the average person makes in a single day? Drop your guess in the chat. I'm seeing lots of numbers, 10,000, 1,000, 300. It's moving too fast to even read them all out. Lots of them, right? Definitely lots of them. You find yourself making decisions like, should I have cereal or eggs for breakfast, or this shirt or that shirt, or how do I differentiate this lesson? What should I make for dinner? Do I call that parent now or wait until tomorrow? Or how do I react to the way that parent emailed me? Or what do I do about my kid who is struggling with this behavior? Or all of these different things. Should I wear this shirt or that one? What color should I paint my nails? Like, so many random decisions that we're making all the time that have to do with teaching, that don't. So many, right? Most of these are so small that you don't even realize you're making them. And there's a number floating around. There are a lot of different numbers floating around. The one that, if you look it up for teachers specifically, you usually see around 1,500 decisions. But I actually couldn't find the source for that. And I don't even think the actual number is even what matters. What matters is the research that shows that decision-making draws on real mental energy. Who feels that? That, like, with all the decisions you make, and who feels that when you realize you're making more decisions, that suddenly it's even harder to make more of them? That you're just like, I can't even think right now. Like, right? So whatever the actual number is doesn't matter. What really matters is the lived reality of it, that it is a lot of decisions, and that the more there are, the more it weighs down on your mental energy. And literally your brain can only make so many decisions. That's why it does have these neural pathways and patterns. So it kind of helps to shortcut that. And we're going to talk about how sometimes that helps us, sometimes that hurts us throughout this event. But it's a lot. And that's exactly why you might have heard about how Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck every single day. And it's not because like he was like, oh, I love black turtlenecks. I mean, maybe he did. I don't know. But the reason that a lot of like business things I've read say he did that is because he didn't want to spend any of his decision-making energy on what to wear that day. So he just got a bunch of black turtlenecks. That decision was done. So he had more mental energy left for the decisions that actually needed to be made. Now, he was a CEO of a high-level company. That is a job where you have a lot of decisions, and so is teacher, right? How many decisions do we make a day as a teacher? So many little micro decisions, so many little people or big people, depending on what you teach, that we're supporting all the time. So I thought to myself, how can we apply this same thing as teachers? What are some decisions ahead of time we can make as teachers during the summer where we have a bit more time than we usually do during the school year? During the school year, you might not have these 2 days to do this professional development in case your school gave you the days off, right? So we have a little bit more time right now. So I want you to lock in some decisions on your refresh plan. Those are the decisions we're making ahead of time. We're going to figure out what we can decide now instead of having to decide later. So back to school, like August comes around, September, whenever you go back, July for some of you, I know. We can be like, oh yeah, that decision is already made, done, right? So we're going to decide now. And again, there are ones that are even every single day, like the black turtleneck, right? There are different types of decisions that we can do. Can we start with black turtleneck or something fad for teachers, right? Maybe we can do something a little more fun, but right? Like I like this shirt. I'm going to buy 5 in the same color and just rotate them each week. Now, not all decisions look the same either. Not every decision ahead of time. I like to call them decision ahead of time. Like I literally give them a name because it's like, oh, this is a decision I made ahead of time. Even giving it that label tells my brain something that like, yes, I made this decision already. I don't need to rehash this again. But some are simple. You just decide and it's done. Others take a little more prep before the decision gets easier. Some even go a little deeper than we have time for today. And one type might be the most important of all. Let me know if you have any guesses of what the most important one might be. And I'm not going to tell you if you're right or wrong until we get there. I love one of the comments say your kids will let you know if you do. Oh yeah, they do. When I got to the point where I was wearing a pair of maternity pants that was the only one that fit me, they made sure to point that out. Okay, so this should say type number 1, but here we go. The simple decisions. Some decisions don't need a full-on plan, just like a decision. Like you might decide today, I'm showing up to this event, and then you're just doing it, right? And it's not something you have to like think about too long. Or I'm leaving this Friday when the bell rings, or I'm not checking my email after 5 this year. You decide it once and there's not much prep. There might be some mental stuff, right? Especially maybe around the email one, but it's not like there's much you need to do. It's just like the mental weighing on you of whether you've made that decision or not, right? And once you've made it, it's like, it's done. I'm not going to keep waffling about it. I'm not going to use my mental energy about it. I'm going to remind myself I already made this decision. The next one is to prep ahead, but they're so worth it. This is what I call some that are prep ahead, but so worth it ones. Other decisions get easier once you've done a little bit work ahead of time to systemize. There might be things you do to streamline your classroom, like making a classroom management plan. So you're not day to day figuring out like, what am I going to do to help this kid or that kid or your first day of school? We're going to have a lot of our guest presenters today who are going to help you make decisions like these that are going to be like, okay, I'm going to prep this right now. And now during the school year, I don't need to think about this anymore. One of those that I've been preaching since I started what was called Wife Teacher Mommy back in the day in 2014 is subplans. One of the biggest decisions to make when you're calling in, let's say you wake up and you're sick, right? And you haven't done subplans. Your decision is then, oh, do I write subplans or do I go in? That decision is a little harder because it's actually either one is kind of not great, right? They're kind of two not great decisions. But if you put together a subtub and it's like, I just need to call in, it's already done, or I'm going to go in, and you've already made the decision that if I'm sick, I'm going to call in. That decision is already done, and you have your emergency sub plan. So this is an example of something that can be made easier when you've made that decision ahead of time. When I'm sick, I'm going to call in and I'm going to let them know my sub tub is right here. My sub binder is right here. If you need help with that, I know a girl who can help you out with that. We've got some links in your workbook of our sub plans that have been trusted by we did the math the other day, Megan on the team. It was actually over 400,000 teachers. I was actually blown away by how many have used our sub plans in the last 11 years. Another one is the deeper types of decisions that we need to make. Some of them go even deeper, like what you'll actually say when someone walks into the room expecting something you didn't plan for, like setting a boundary. Like it's like you can make the decision on like, this is what I'm going to do. But also there might be some things that are making it even harder than just making that decision. There might be some nervous system responses. There might be some fears. There might be some coaching that actually needs to happen to support you in order to be able to make that decision. So those are a bit deeper. We're not going to get fully into it in this session, but kind of what you're going to see potentially in coaching tomorrow. And as we talk about tomorrow, for sure, the coaching framework that I use, this is going to help with those deeper ones. Sometimes it's not as simple as just like, oh, just decide, because there's so much more to being human and deciding on things than it sometimes sounds for the ones that are deeper. Yes, like Tabitha says, when a student says something off the wall and inappropriate, we have to think on our feet. Yeah, or maybe like at a time you decided, here's my catchphrase when somebody says something like that, right? So yeah. And then this is the most important one. Did anybody get it? The most important type of decision to make is what I call the subtraction decisions. What are you going to get rid of or stop doing? This is actually, I would argue, more important than what you decide you're going to start doing, because so often we are trying to do too many things. And we're going to talk about this even more tomorrow, but we do too many things of what is not important and not enough of what is. So when we figure out what we can subtract, what we can let go of, both in teaching and in our life, it is really one of the most important things. And it's one of the ones that our brains are the worst at noticing on their own, because our brain thinks everything is urgent, everything is important. What I call our teacher brain, the default wiring. But we can overcome that with the coaching framework that I'm going to be teaching tomorrow. That is going to help you to be able to even have some of those aha moments that Tori had talking about on your own as well. And here, like I said, here's the truth about what feels important. Not everything your brain insists is important actually is. It's really good at making everything feel urgent, unless you put it through a filter and ask, is this actually important? Is this actually urgent? There are things that could wait or be delegated or not even need to happen at all. And that's one thing I want you to take away from this, is that you don't have to do it all. This refresh plan, the whole purpose behind this event that I put together is not for you to be like, to come to these sessions and get so many ideas of all these things you have to do. I've told all of our presenters to show ways that you can streamline and make things easier. Did my husband call you? Is what Elizabeth said. I love it. I love it. So it really is okay to let some things go this year. It doesn't mean you're dropping the ball. It can look like doing something more simply. It doesn't even mean you have to fully let it go, but maybe it's like, oh yeah, I'm not going to change out my bulletin board as often, or maybe I'm not going to go all out with that, you know? So just deciding when you'll get, and another thing you can do for your brain to rest is just be like, hey, I'm not doing that right now. I'm doing it next Tuesday. We can rest until then, right? So deciding when you're going to do something and deciding that that's not right now can really be a tip that can help you in moving forward. So with any of these 4 types of decisions to make, the same type of fear can creep in. But what if I decide wrong? Who has ever felt that? Who has ever felt, I know somebody who's dear to my heart, who I love, and she was looking for a laptop. And she was spending a lot of time like deciding on which one, that it took like a whole year to decide which laptop she wanted to get. And so sometimes we can spend so much time like, am I going to do it wrong? When really, maybe there's no right or wrong. There was no wrong laptop to get, right? Sometimes we let that fear of us doing the wrong thing
be the reason we don't decide at all. And that mental energy we're still spending on that thing that we could have moved on from to get to the next thing. We're just stuck. We're wanting to feel certain before we commit, but there's not always certainty. We need to just decide and then know and trust in ourselves that we can always decide differently if we realize that that's not the right decision, right? You're not going to feel certain. Certainty comes after from watching what the decision actually does once you live with it for a while. Waiting to feel sure is just another way of staying stuck. And it might even be what your patterns are comfortable with. It might actually be comfortable with you being stuck versus you being decisive, which is a little bit crazy to think about. But sometimes our brain actually wants to stay in its same patterns versus actually do something that is going to help you grow and improve. It's kind of what one of my coaches calls a growth edge or feeling resistance. We feel more comfortable staying where we are versus doing the thing that feels a little bit uncomfortable, like making a decision and actually moving through with it, because that's where we are used to. We're used to that stuck feeling. And even though we don't like it, it's what we're used to. So I bet somebody in that room needed to hear that. That wasn't planned, but but we're going with it. A quote from, again, Chrissy, who was actually in that video clip at the beginning. She's a fellow coach and friend of mine, and she sometimes participates in Educate and Rejuvenate events. She's not at this one, but she's part of our world. But what she said on a coaching call one time, and I've remembered this for years, she doesn't even remember saying it, but she said, what you decide is right. What is right is what you decide. And that's like, yeah, like what I decide, that is the right decision for right now. And then if it's not then I'll decide again later. But for right now, that is what's right because it's what I decided. And that doesn't mean every decision will work out perfectly. Some of them aren't going to. You'll adjust, you'll learn, you might even change your mind later, and that's allowed. But the decision itself isn't the risky part. It's staying stuck in that indecision, waiting for a guarantee that doesn't exist. That is the cost. So another thing you want to do is make sure that once you're making these decisions that you put them somewhere besides your brain. And that is why we're doing the refresh plan. So you're going to put a lot of your decisions that you're making during this event into that plan. And remember what we talked about earlier. Every decision you make costs you something. And undecided things cost a lot because they're constantly running in your mind. But even decisions you make, your brain might want to continue to remind you, remember, we made this decision. So you put it somewhere else that, I can always refer back to this. Maybe it is a paper planner. I see some of you mentioning this in the chat. Maybe it's a refresh plan. It needs to go somewhere on paper, in an app, whatever, so your brain can actually stop checking it. For those who love paper planners, we do have an awesome planner that is linked in your workbook. If you have the Platinum Pass, you have the digital version already included. You've already got it. Same with club members. If you join the annual club during this, you'll get one. But the tool matters less than this, deciding where your decisions are going to live so it doesn't have to live completely in your brain. So your challenge for today, as you build your refresh plan, and this is really your challenge for today and tomorrow, as you build your refresh plan, make sure you make some decisions today that will help you streamline now ahead of next year. That are going to support you, that you already have some decisions made ahead of time. And most importantly, see how many, I challenge you to maybe even keep track of how, make it a little game with yourself of how many decisions are decisions of things you let go. Maybe and this wasn't planned, but something that can help is doing a little thing to celebrate. Maybe you have a song you listen to every time you realize, or maybe you do a little, I don't know, whatever signals to your brain that I made another decision to let something go, and actually remind yourself of that. And keep track of how many decisions that are of things that you are letting go of, because those are the ones that are going to help you the most going into this next school year. And trust yourself to decide. Nothing you hear from today, from me or from any of our speakers, is a requirement. You know your teaching career, all of it better than I do, better than Teresa, who's about to come on, better than any of our guest presenters. Everything we offer to you is an option, and you are the one who decides what is actually worth your time this year. Whatever rises to the top for you by the end of each day is what is going to go on your refresh plan. Everything else can just wait. So a recap of what we covered so far. This year handed you a lot that was out of your control, and your reactions to it make sense. There's nothing wrong with you. And reacting fast often feels safer than pausing. And that's because so many of us have beliefs in a nervous system all of us, doing what we learn to do. And I call the default patterning our teacher brain. And the cycle that we've talked about, the push hard, crash, recover, hope it next time is different, shows up in small waves all year, and then small little ones, and then one big one that overarches the whole school year. This event is the pattern interrupt, that is the pause, that is going to keep that cycle from repeating. And between what happens and how you respond, there's a space. We're creating it by being here. We went over Tori's coaching call, which showed us what space actually looks like. She didn't leave with a finished plan, but with more clarity on what she actually wanted, so she can make a plan from there. We need to get inward before we can actually really know what we want. And then decisions ahead of time come in 4 types. The simple ones, the ones that need a little prep. The deeper ones we'll go into more on the podcast tomorrow and in the club, and decisions to let something go entirely. Another thing to remember is not everything your brain says is important actually is. Run it through that filter. Is this actually important before it earns a spot on your plan? You don't need to feel certain to decide. What you decide is right. And whatever you decide needs to live somewhere outside your head so your brain can actually let it go.
I hope you enjoyed that session from the summer refresh, and that it can help you make some decisions ahead of time as you go into the school year, or as you go into next week or next month, whenever you are listening to this. Now, quick recap. There are 4 types of decisions to make ahead of time. Those simple ones, like deciding you're leaving when the bell rings. The ones that are worth a little prep, like your subplans. Again, we've got subplans for you in our TPT shop, so check those out. There are ready-to-go subplans loved by hundreds of thousands of teachers if you need help. There are also deeper ones, such as boundaries and things that take a little more time and even maybe a little coaching needed to actually follow through on them. But just starting to make that decision is better than to not doing it. And then the most important one, the subtraction decisions. What are you not going to do anymore that is not aligned? This is the most important one. So if you walk away from anything from this episode on this podcast today, I hope it is at least one idea of something you're going to let go in this school year. Because in order to really use what I call the inside out teacher framework, which as we've talked about on this podcast is to observe and then choose and then align, to really align yourself, it's impossible to try to juggle and do everything. So it's really about what can we let go of. Now, here's what I didn't have time to get into in this session is fully diving into that inside out teacher framework. And if you were here on the podcast, you're like, wait, I've heard you talk about observe, choose, align. I read your book. What do you mean by inside out teacher framework? And a lot of new things I taught at the event a few weeks ago that have not been taught anywhere else. And we will get there eventually here on the podcast when I have the bandwidth to record fully new episodes. But I am teaching the full framework and all the new things, all the new ways that I've put together to explain these things that are resonating more with teachers than ever. I had teachers in the chat during the event who were like, I've been at your past events, but now I seem to really get it now, because I've just, after several years of coaching and really diving deep with so many teachers, I have been able to figure out ways to explain things that are better than ever. So I would love for you to come to Quiet Your Teacher Brain. It is my new masterclass. This one is the back to school edition, and it is going to support you in going into the school year and actually leaving your teacher brain at the door at school, but then being present at school when you want to be there too. You're going to be present where you want to be. That is one of the 3 states that you want to feel more that we're going to talk about during that webinar as well. So that is exactly what I'm teaching live at Quiet Your Teacher Brain next week for anyone listening as it comes out. So go to educateandrejuvenate.com/teacherbrain to grab your spot. Did I mention it's free to come live to the webinar? So I hope to see you there. Thank you for joining me on Educate and Rejuvenate, the podcast today. If you love what you heard in this episode, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're hungry for even more, be sure to check out the book that I wrote. It's called Educate and Rejuvenate, a 3-step guide to revitalize your teaching, renew your spirit, and reignite your passion for life. It takes everything you learn here on the podcast and that I teach our members inside the Educate and Rejuvenate Club into a guidebook you can refer to again and again. One of our early readers said it was like clarity for her brain. Plus, it's not only a book. With your purchase, you'll get a full PDF guide with exercises and links to videos and more so that you can not only consume but apply everything that you learn. If you're ready to make Educate and Rejuvenate not just a podcast you passively listen to, but a lifestyle that you put into action, it's time to grab your copy on Amazon today. Or head to educateandrejuvenate.com/book to read the first chapter and the introduction today.